Women have no capacity whatsoever to love. In fact, women are totally incapable of loving. This is the mainstream narrative that I want us to challenge today because it's a narrative that has been pushed for way too long. And it's a narrative that exists primarily in the masculinity spaces. And I want us to challenge it because it has bred a lot of toxicity in relationships. Because as far as it is concerned, this is a narrative that has been pushed to a lot of young men, and young men and young minds are very impressionable. And the mistake of packaging it as that is that the men or the young men who are consuming that type of content will take it at face value, and then that will be their modus operandi or their default mindset once they get into a relationship. And that tends to work very negatively for the dynamic of that relationship. It tends to start off the relationship from a platform of toxicity. So, I am the common sense messiah back to challenge another mainstream narrative. And let us get into it without any further ado. Now, why does this statement exist? This statement is very valid in a sense once you consider the context in which it exists, and the misinterpretation is that much dangerous because if you look at it, the reason it exists is because when you're comparing men to women, and especially when they are qualifying mates or people to date, they tend to function off of very different mindsets. In a sense, when a man is qualifying a woman to be maybe a worthy date or someone worthy of getting in a relationship with, he is most likely selecting for qualities that exist naturally within this woman. We're talking about youth, we're talking about beauty, we're talking about her natural sense to be impressionable, coachable. Yeah, and that's what exists when they are younger. And by young, I mean early 20s, so that you don't get that pedo nonsense into your minds. So that's why the women who are in their young to mid 20s tend to be at the highest sexual marketplace value for most of these men, especially those considered high value men. That's the age group that they will end up dating for the most part. And these qualities, being that they are natural, they are not things that require the woman to naturally, to work for them, tends to get translated as the man gives love without condition because the woman did not have to work for anything to earn the love of the man. Compare that to what the women select for when they are looking for partners to date in men. Every single qualifier that a woman will have or will consider most important in this man and worthy of him being a good mate is going to be things that are going to be built on meritocracy, things that will require a man to work on. We are talking about status. That doesn't just come inbuilt. We're talking about leadership skills. We're talking about the capacity of having emotional intelligence, emotional control, emotional regulation. We're talking about things like a certain net worth, finances, yeah, financial security in that sense. These are things that do not exist naturally in a man. These are things that he has to work for. And as such, it is considered that a woman's love is conditional because it is based upon things that a man has to work for. And in a sense, if you look at it, if the man loses that, his attraction towards the woman, or rather, what the woman considers attractive in him, tends to disappear, and hence the woman starts considering him less attractive, and that tends to make it look like the women love conditionally or give what is called fake love, and hence that's why the notion that women have no capacity to love is peddled as much as it is. That is the premise in which it exists. The fact that the things that would make you worthy of a woman's love are things that you have to work extremely hard for, work to become. And even especially the case if you want to say get married and have this woman long term, the burden of performance gets that much harder. So this tends to make it look like women do not offer genuine love compared to the men who will qualify a woman for things she doesn't necessarily have to work for. So his love for the woman tends to be perceived more unconditional compared to the woman. Now, why is this a lie? The reason it's a lie is because, number one, women have the capacity to love, and heartbreaks are that much evidence that it is. capacity they have, because heartbreaks are built on emotional investment. If the woman did not love this person, why the hell would she be devastated? And I'm talking about genuine heartbreak, not these fakers, because we have a lot of women who fake heartbreaks for that sympathy. But for the ones who genuinely feel it, they're feeling it out of an emotional investment that they had put to this guy, and it ended up hurting them. Now, the other reason, and this is the primary reason why this statement is considered very true amongst men, is because men do not have the psychological or emotional wiring for them to perceive the love of a woman. And I'm going to add a layer to that. The men do not have the psychological or the emotional wiring to perceive the love from a woman without respect. That's the main issue here. Where there is no respect, a man will not consider anything else. Where respect is given, he is happy, he's gotten what he wants, and in most cases, he'll not care for anything after that. Now, let me explain to you why this communication barrier in terms of love languages and respect languages exists. It's because a man is bound by principle. The reason he wants this woman is to build an empire, create a home for her, and start a generation with him. And these are things, like everything else is built, that are based on principle. For him to have gotten the wealth he has, the status he has, the leadership that is, associated with him, and the amount of influence that he has on other people, it has required him to be very principled. And as such, this relationship that he's forming with the woman is also going to be based on principles. And the principles that are mostly governing most of these relationships from a man's perspective is going to be respect and loyalty. Those are the primary principles. When the man gets that, the woman can get anything, absolutely anything she wants from the man. And as such, the man doesn't bother to go look into, does this woman really love me? But if they were to really do it, they would understand that yes, women have the capacity to love, and it is manifested in two ways. The first way is a woman who loves you will either baby you or baby herself before you. And this is something you're most likely going to observe in your life as well if you've been in relationships with women. Think about it in your past. You either had a woman who, because of loving you, she ended up babying you, and this is manifested as a sense of getting into. This woman tends to do a lot of acts of service. She wants to do things right by you. She becomes even maybe a gifter. She generally treats you how she would treat a child, but in a more endearing way that you're not able to see it. But that's exactly what is happening. She doesn't even know it herself, but she's babying you. That's her love language. On the other end, we have women who, once they fall in love with you or they love you, they fall back to the state of being vulnerable and considering you a safe space, and they baby themselves before you or in your presence because they feel that much sense of security. So these two are going to be how women showcase their love for you. And the reason why it doesn't matter to most men is because once it exists without respect, then it doesn't matter. The man will never know. Because if you really look at it, it's very easy for a woman who loves a man to baby him even in front of his friends or even in front of his family, his colleagues, in front of people who consider this man to be someone they respect. And once the woman comes with that energy of babying him out of love genuinely, it might be perceived as though she's babying him, and the man is not going to appreciate that, and that might come as a conflict issue. And on the other end, if a woman tends to baby herself before her man, if this woman has no control over this phenomenon, and she tends to do that as well in a space where this man is very much respected, we're talking about in front of his friends, colleagues, family, or even in other contexts that require some certain degree of seriousness, it might be perceived as though this dude has a very needy woman and all of that. And the man is not going to interpret that as love in that particular scenario because he's not in the mind state of, I want to be romantic to you right now. He's in a work mode, he's in meeting mode, he's in a whole different context. And he's only going to translate that as nagging. And for the woman who babies him, he's going to translate that as disrespect. Because why are you treating me like a baby in front of these people who respect me so much? So that's why respect is the primary, most important factor to a man. And I'm going to give you another example so that you can understand the love from a woman does not matter where respect is not there. Say, take a good example of a hostage situation. The man has been kidnapped, and in this fictional hostage situation, the person who has kidnapped this man demands that the ransom for his release is that he has sex with his woman. A loving woman is willing to compromise her values so that she can save the life of the man that she loves. And most likely, as much as she doesn't want to, and this is very much a grape case, she is going to do it to save his life out of love. But the man doesn't want that. Doesn't want that. That's the funny thing. Men would die for their principles. Compare that to now if the woman understood and respected the husband and knew that the man values certain principles, even removing love from the equation, or whether she loves him or doesn't love him, just the respect thought process. Yeah, if she was to operate from a point of the respect thought process, she would know my husband values XYZ, my husband would not XYZ, and in this particular case, he is more than willing to sacrifice himself for my dignity. And in a sense, she's gonna say no, and the husband is gonna die feeling very proud. Quite a bad gamble if you ask me, but it just is what it is. That's how men are wired. We would rather die than see certain things happen, or we would rather die than be recipients of certain things. And this is what I'm talking about. A woman's love will never matter to a man if it doesn't come with respect. But that does not mean that the woman does not love the man. That does not mean that the woman is incapable of loving. And that is the unfortunate situation with what the mainstream spaces that discuss these topics tend to push. Women do have the capacity to love very, very much. It's just expressed differently in a manner that the men cannot perceive it without there being respect. Now, if there's respect, then that creates a platform for where the man is receptive to the woman's love languages. But if a woman wants a successful relationship, if a woman wants a successful marriage, her primary love language should always be respect. Respect and loyalty for the most part. Majority of the men value loyalty a lot, and I think loyalty is a part of respect as well. So that's just to emphasize. That's the reason why this toxic statement that women do not love exists, and that is also why it has been pushed for so long, and that is also why it's a misinformation. It's a misinformation because men are not wired to perceive the love of a woman without having been respected first. Respect is always going to be the primary love language of men, and once that is provided, then perhaps he can now start perceiving the love that you have for him. So that being said, I hope I've debunked that perfectly, and you can go look into your own lives and understand that that is how the man is built. That being said, have a nice time, and I will see you in the next one.